one thing that I hear over and over and over again. It has to do with this, the spectrum of emerging singers to elite singers. The public sees wow at every level, but we don't. And it's a really hard concept to break people out of seeing things differently. So I've come up with an example, or let's just follow this through, because here's what a lot of people think. You know what? If you want to grow and you want to bring more, you need to be an elite, high-performing, superlative group. So let's say that you were going to enter a chorus into a contest, and it's on a 100-point scale, okay? And using that theory, then a group singing at 50, which is probably around here, that's one thing, but a group singing at 60 would bring in more members, right? And a group singing at 70 would bring even more members. And a group singing at 80 or in the 90s and approaching this 100, then, hey, these groups singing in the 90s would bring in even more than all the rest. And that might be true, but who are you bringing in? If you're bringing people in from other groups, is that really growing this whole thing that we call music? Or is it, let's take it in barbershop terms. There's all these chapters, right? And there's a lot of groups that say, hey, we want to become an elite group. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. That is an honorable goal. Here's what happens a lot of times is people will leave these groups to run to that group, that's singing in the 70s or approaching 80, let's say, and they kind of burn bridges with the groups that they left. Yeah? Okay. You ever heard of this happening? And then what happens is, everybody runs there, and then every single point moving from 76 to 77, and 77 to 78, and 78 to 78.3, 8.7, gets to be harder and harder. And then pretty soon, there's the glass ceiling that we talked. People get disheartened. And they're like, well, it was easy in the beginning. Yeah, right? Oh, let's all do this. Sure, yeah. And everybody's got all this energy. And then it gets harder and harder and harder. And then all of a sudden, someone comes along and builds a better mousetrap and says, no, we're going to do better than that. And then everybody leaves that group. And every time they leave a group, it's hard to go back to the one that you left, because sometimes there's hard feelings. So my question is, first, does that help? Okay, maybe not with the people that are currently singing, right? Because it burns bridges. And how many times have we seen groups that try to become this, and now they're almost non-existent, or they're a shadow of themselves? But now let's take it just from the general populaces. That's the more important part, is what does the rest of the world think? And here's the way it would work. If you have a very elite group singing, and it's perfection, and you've got Paul. Let's say Paul comes in, and my neighbor gave me a ticket to see this performance, right? And you get me front row seats. Thank you very much. That was super awesome of you. Glad to have you as a friend. And I'm sitting in the front row, and I'm just like, this music is just going, just wafting over me. And it's amazing, and I'm blown away. I'm like, holy smokes. And then you get to the end of the song, and there's one person holding one note for 33 seconds live, right? Posting a note for that long with good vocal production and quality for 33 seconds. Now, what would have to happen for me to be a part of that group? I would have to just go, that was amazing, but I could totally do that. I mean, that looks easy. They made it look simple. And no one's going to think that. If I'm an emerging singer that I maybe will sing in the shower, if nobody else is in the house, but as soon as I hear the front door, oh, right? Is that going to be the group for me? Probably not. So this whole thing falls under its own weight. If you're going to be an elite group, the only place you're going to pull people from is probably elite singers. So we need groups. I'm not saying that these groups are bad, because they are not. So if you're hearing that and you're saying, oh, we know it's really bad for singing, it's bad for barbershop, is it? No, that's just as wrong. What we need is groups all along the spectrum. We need all of them. Because, hey, I'm the singing in the shower person, and maybe in the car if no one else is in it. But as soon as I see someone looking at me, I wasn't singing, right? We need that. And then we need for people to feel like they're progressing. So the one thing that I will say, I don't mean to get on my on a tirade or anything like that. Says I'm usually a pretty calm person. So it's just meant to be that this is not the answer. And just as much as only this is not the answer. So it's not red and blue, right? Pick your team. No, we need all the way across. So I don't want to hear they shouldn't, and they steal members, and we don't need to hear any of that, right? Need it all. Okay, so that's just something that I really wanted to clarify. So we're going to move on to how people come into singing, and especially singing in a choral or choir or chorus. Let's talk about that. And I have had this conversation with, I don't even know, hundreds probably of groups, hundreds. And at this point, I ask people, Simon says, raise your hand. And then I say, Simon says, you may put your hand down if you joined barbershop or singing or a community group, etc., because someone personally invited you to a show, sing out, a rehearsal, or even a practice, etc. Now, here's the thing. Where did I put that black one? We might be going with blue tonight, everybody. So 70% of people will then put their hand down. Invite Ted. Oh man, I'm not doing that very well from over here. I may rewrite it later. We'll see. The other 30% of you that still have your hands up, Simon says you may put your hand down if you heard the music. And it's funny because I have a slide that after everybody puts their hand down, I go to the next screen and it says 70% of you now have your hand down. They all look around like, how did he do that? Well, I was a math major in college. No, and it's just because it is what it is. That is how this works. It is personal and interpersonal connection. That is what makes the difference. It is not necessarily this, and it's not necessarily this, right? It is the personally invited. Not, oh, I put an ad in the paper. Some people may say, oh, I joined it because there was an ad in the paper. No, you didn't. You didn't join because there was an ad in the paper. You're part of the next group. How many of you, Simon says, now how many of you, Simon, let me do this better. Simon says, put your hand down if you joined singing or barbershop or community choir because you heard the music and then you walked up and talked to somebody. Or you saw that there was an ad in the paper about that group or that style of music. Or you saw that there was a Facebook group or a meetup or whatever, right? And almost, there's usually about 1% that still have their hands up. Oh, that wasn't, either one of those were me. But the 30%, think about that. Nobody goes waltzing into a group because they've never heard of it and they don't know what it is. Oh yeah, I had no idea what barbershop music was, but I thought I would join that. I also joined cat juggling or something like that, right? I don't know what that is, but I thought I joined it. People don't generally do that. And I forget where the cat juggling thing came from. It's some Steve Martin thing, I think. So you can look it up. Anyway, people don't join something that they don't know about, usually. That's a big hint for what may be coming. How could people know more about us? So let's talk about the other 30%. Maybe I will stand up. 30% join because they heard the music. That's important. Yeah, let's redo this. In fact, I'm going to refine this and write personally. Invited. I'm going to take a step back and kind of prove. So what about the 1%? What about the 1%? Well, there's some people that still have their hand up. And I said, well, how did you get into barbershop? If you're into music or singing, and if they're not in the personally invited or having heard the music, I'm like, wow, I need to know what this is. And then they say, well, you know, my parents were in it. And then I say, the next slide, I just hit it. And it says, if you have parents or family members that were singing or in groups or in barbershop, etc., then you have been both personally invited by them, I guarantee it, and you have heard the music. So you may put your hand down. And I'd be, oh, that's hilarious. There was one, it was awesome. All right, I'm going to take time to share it. Not much value, but it is fun. So I had one guy, I went through everything, and he still had his hand up. I'm like, well, what was it, sir? He said, well, I walked into the basement of this church, and I thought it was an AA meeting. What? Everybody's laughing. And I'm not breaking any confidences. One, because I'm not saying who it is. And two, he shared it with everybody. And he said, oh, yeah, I went down in the basement, and I thought it was the AA meeting. And then I thought it was really weird because they all started singing. And I went, huh, must be the 13th step. This is so good. And then everybody's done laughing. He goes, oh, that wasn't even the best part. I go, yeah, what was the best part? He goes, well, when we went out drinking afterward. Oh, must have been part of the weaning process. Okay, so that is probably not the plan. And we're always going to have some kind of outliers. And gentlemen, whoever you were, I don't remember your name. I remember where I was. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's all right. Jackson will get it. He just unplugged our circle light. But these are the really big ticket items. The being personally invited and then having heard our music. And what's the best way to hear it? Ding, 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 live. So now we're on to something. If we know these things, then I'm going to tell you, whatever approach you take should probably have these two elements in it. People outside of your rehearsal hall, outside of your performance hall, need to hear you. And then they need to be personally invited. They don't need a cattle call from the stage, right? They don't need, hey, well, let's say it's a mixed group. Ladies, gentlemen, if you would like to sing on Thursday nights at 8 o'clock, come up and talk to one of the people up here in the blue and green and orange and brown sequined vests. Nice choice, everybody. Right? I'm going to tell you that kind of Come and talk to one of us afterward. Be happy to share things with you. Doing that, I'm going to tell you this. This is a big thing. I didn't mean to point at you, but it's a big thing. Doing that is worse than doing nothing. What? Wait, we just invited them. No, you asked them to make a decision sitting in the seats. Because if I'm sitting in the seats and I'm sitting in the front row, like we had me there earlier in this episode, I was sitting in the front row. You've now asked me to make a decision, and a decision that I don't have all the facts to. Because now I'm going to look at this group and say, wow. Doesn't matter where they're on the spectrum. I think they're good. Wow. Otherwise, yeah. I cannot read music. They must meet 3, 4, 5 times a week, time that I don't have. I have teenage boys. There aren't any teenage boys up there, so I doubt that I would be welcomed if we came as, all together and something we could do together. The list goes on. I mean, they sing better than I'll ever sing. So a lot of these things are false, because what you've done by asking that question, you've forced me to make a decision. And it's almost like one of Newton's laws of motion. An object at rest remains at rest unless acted upon by an external force. And an object at rest, I am currently not in the group. So what is my tendency? To not be in the group. And then your force came out and said, hey, if you want to do something, then you should talk to us if you want to do this. Right? All the impetus is on me. It's not on the external force. It's all on me. And so now I have to sit here and say, boy, I don't have much momentum behind this big immovable object. And so now I'm going to say, well, I can't read music. I'm not a very good singer. I have younger people in my family that I don't think that they would welcome, etc. So now when you go to talk to me in the lobby, you've now armed me with all the reasons, and I have them on the ready, because I just created them, for why I'm not going to join your group. So what could we do instead? I've written something, and I don't know if I'll get it right. I wrote it. I didn't mean I memorized it. Cattle. I better stand up. We know how this writing goes if I don't stand up. Cattle call alternative. Now, okay, I'm going to get you to think 4 words. Let's pretend that I'm emceeing your show, of your group, of your high school group. And you have the student body there, or you're in the community, you're a community group, and the community is there watching. Doesn't matter. Whatever your group is, I'm emceeing your show. And I come out at just the time when the audience and you have a great rapport, regardless of when that is, and say, ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted to mention something to you. Did you know that 70% of the people in this group had never performed in front of others before joining? Oh, what? That's amazing. And that's usually what I experience, is about 70%. Could be more in high school. They're like, oh, the only reason I did it is because, Mrs. Fixler invited me. Awesome. So that's the first part. Then I can go on to say, and did you know that over half of the people on this stage tonight cannot read music? Another gasp is heard throughout the performance hall. Yes. These are just the men, women, that love singing around the house or in the car. And aren't they doing a great job? Yay, woo, right? So what 4 words are you thinking now? Watch. I could do that. Tell me you weren't thinking it. Now, isn't that better than cattle calls from the stage that says, I'm not going to join the group? I could do that. And now they're watching the rest of the show saying, man, look at that guy up there. He's about my age and he looks like he's having so much fun and he doesn't look any smarter than me. I mean, if he can do it, that's great. Hey, the other thing that I've been using, and this is kind of a newer thing, I've been using this terminology about music. Hey, if you're worried about reading music, I'm going to give you a music test. Okay? Here's your music test. It would actually be a sheet of music. Let's say you put it up on a big screen or something like that. I'm going to draw it right here just because it's easier to get to. Well, let's say there's these notes right here. I know that's not drawn to scale. And there's a note here, and there's a note here, and then there's a note there. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here's your starting note. That's note number 1. Is note number 1 lower or higher than note? Is note number 2, I should say, is note number 2 lower or higher than note number 1? Yeah, it's down, right. It's downy from there. And is note number 3 uppy or downy from note number 2? Well, it's uppy. You've now passed your musical test. All you need to be able to do is to look at a sheet of music and, hey, we can get you learning tracks. If you have struggle, with eyesight, we can get you learning tracks as well. But if all you know is uppy and downy, you've got all of the musical knowledge that you need. That's it. You passed. And that's like, wow. Maybe I should have drawn it this way. That's probably better, right? If I'd have done it uppy first, because that's the way I like to say it. Uppy there. There we go. And downy there. Uppy, downy. Super easy, right? I love that. So, if you can do uppy, downy, there you go. And then you engage people after a performance. You just talk to them. We'll talk about how to talk to them later. But this is a really simple, engaging way to allow people to see how welcoming and attainable this, how welcoming we are as people and how attainable this really is. The rest, we can teach them the rest. So, yeah. Anyway. All right, how are we doing on time, Jackson? Any questions, by the way? As always, questions are always welcomed and encouraged. 4 minutes. 4 minutes. All right, so I'm going to cover one concept. 3 minutes. 3 minutes? Okay. I'm going to cover one concept. Let's talk about, just in advertising or marketing or however you want to say it, what would be more effective in a person-to-person conversation or a phone call? Okay. Virtually everybody would say a person-to-person conversation. At least the person that is sharing the information would say that. The people that's getting no, just send me an email so I can delete it. Okay, so not as effective. So a person-to-person conversation is more effective than a phone call, which is probably more effective than a handwritten letter. Dear Paul, right? I can think of the last handwritten letter that I received. It's from our old neighbor. We called her Grandma Dot, and she sends handwritten letters and notes, and I just love them. So before that, it was my paternal grandmother. So handwritten letter. then that handwritten letter is probably more effective than a, I don't know, something sent to your home. Dear Mr. Ellinger, you need gutters. Do you need gutters? Or we were in the neighborhood and we saw that you need gutters. Okay. Which is more effective than a dear resident, we were in your neighborhood and saw that you needed gutters. Which is more effective than doing nothing. So, if we have all these things stacked up, what makes the thing at the top or the things above and the things below either more effective or less effective? Here's how you figure it out. Here's how you figure it out. The things at the top, there are two things. There are two aspects of this. And almost everyone gets the second most important one. And almost no one, I mean 1 out of 3,000 get the second one. The first one is, well, let me go with the second one. The second one that everyone gets is, hey, phone call, face-to-face phone call, handwritten letter. Each one is more personal as we go up the echelon. And you can put any other things in here too. It's not about the things that I'm mentioning, it's the concept. So that's the second thing. It is much more personal. Yeah, but that's the second thing. The main ingredient is what? Here's the hint. The bottom one is do nothing. Right? I have all kinds of data that will prove that doing nothing has no effect. Imagine that. So as you work your way up, you have to do something. That's the opposite. Yeah, you have to be active. So, number 7. Whatever approach you take, it has to have these two concepts. It has to be active and personal. You have to invest your time, not they have to invest their time. Handwritten letter. Think about it. I guarantee if you've received one in the last 10 years, you remember who it's from. And I want to thank you each for being here. I want to thank Jackson for his ongoing support with the technology and being there to plug the lights in and things like that. Love you, buddy. And, hey, as I say, continue to make music.